Blood Sugar Sex Magic
Was later.
was later. That was not on Rick's label, though.
Right.
Was that on Warner or
Warner's,
something?
yeah.
Rick asked you to do that. You guys did it in a house.
Yeah.
What is the setup for that?
You know, we looked for houses before that. I remember Rick was pretty adamant he wanted to record it in the house. He knew what he wanted to do. Wasn't quite sure.
There's videos of this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But before we got that house, we looked at a couple other houses, and he knew what he wanted to do.
Okay.
But he didn't quite know how to do it. Neither did I. But he was like, Rick was a guy that he would empower you to kind of get your thing done. He was good at that. He was like, just handle it.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. We looked at a house up in Mulholland. It was a very modern, big house up over, and it had great views, and it had a great like rock wall, mid-century. And this is going to be great.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I said, there's no way we can record here past 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, what if we put up this and that? Because Rick liked it, and it was cool. I said, the bass is just going to escape.
Right.
We can record here all day, probably. But once the sun goes down, these are expensive houses. People are going to make us crazy. It's never going to happen. So looked at a couple of places and found the place on Laurel Canyon, the house that they ended up in. I think Rick ended up buying that house later. It didn't have a kitchen, and it was in transition from being redone.
Okay.
I think it had been in disrepair. It was in transition, and it was brought back up to where it was workable.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but it was workable. But no kitchen, so they brought a kitchen in to use that stuff. But there's like a big living room in the front. So there's a living room, big living room. There's some little doors, and there's a library, a wood library, probably half the size of this room.
Okay.
So we just walked through there, and we went, okay, this is the control room, the library. This is the main room. And we just walked everywhere. And I don't know that we even looked for anything other than this is a place we can make noise and no one's going to bother us.
Okay.
And honestly, didn't care about the room. I don't care. It's just, we'll figure it out.
You make it happen.
Turns out there was like this basement. It was more like catacombs, but there was I don't know what went down in the basement, but we could put the amps, because they used their touring rigs pretty much. John had his Marshalls and Flea had, I forget what he used, but we put those down in the basement, had the heads upstairs.
Okay.
So we isolation with that.
Okay.
And then this is before Pro Tools and stuff. So
sure.
He hired some guy that did this, that brought a studio, and it was an undertaking.
Yeah. Now two Studers or something like that. What would you have in there?
One Studer.
Okay.
A Studer, and I don't think we had a half-inch in there.
Okay.
Maybe we had a quarter-inch in there, maybe. But we had the monitoring console, and we had a big Neve. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
And then some compressors and whatever and all that kind of stuff. Good mics.
Yep.
They built a little airlock. I didn't know that we need, or actually, one of the guys there may have mentioned that we're going to need an airlock between the library, which just had French doors, and the main room. I said, why? I'm like, we're just going to need this. So they built like an airlock, like a sliding glass door airlock there between there.
Okay.
For the tracking, that's where the singing is, where Anthony stood for the singing.
Okay.
But we just put the drums in the main room because it's big enough. You put it in the big room where everybody can see each other and play, and then once it all got in, you kind of walk around. This will sound fine. Put the drums on a little riser.
Why put them on a riser?
Just that's what they're used to, and
okay.
There's no sound, no sonic thing.
Okay, so it's something that's like being on stage. I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you.
It's possible also in that house they had wood floors and didn't want to nail into the floors. That's possible.
Got it. Beautiful, full, natural drum sound. This is kind of a characteristic thing of records that you worked on.
Uh-huh.
What am I hearing here exactly?
It's funny, whenever I hear these songs on the radio over here now, I just think back to that moment. And it was just fun. Everybody knew they were onto something. And it started off a little nervous because Rick was not always great at introducing people. Like I literally showed up the first day, and
they're like, "Who's this guy?
Like, where's Rick? He's not going to be. He'll be here when it's ready. He's not. We got to get this all working first, And well, he should be here. It's like, you don't need to be here. We're going to be fine. And I was like, gosh, an intro would have been nice. So they kind of hated me right away. Not Flea and Chad, but
yeah.
John and Anthony did not like me right away.
Okay.
I won them over within soon, but
okay.
It took a minute. But this song in particular, that's not the drums in the main room. There was a little room off to the side, and I think they call it a solarium. I don't really know what it was, but it was all all marble. The whole room is marble. I know it had marble floors. I don't remember if it had marble walls or not, but there was no deadening in that room whatsoever.
Is all the reverb I'm hearing there natural, or did
Yes.
you add reverb after?
I think on this record, I added very little actual. One of my things I always used from day one was the big EMT 250.
Okay.
Greatest thing ever.
Explain to people that don't know what that is.
Well, in your Pro Tools rigs, you have an EMT 250 plug-in, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But this was like the original digital reverb. It's about this tall, maybe this tall, and has big handles
Big
on
levers, yeah.
it. It does one thing. It only does one thing. But that one thing it does was essential to records that I was making. And so I don't think I made a record without one, or
And
mixed
what
a
would you
record.
use that on? That
Drums,
would be
predominantly.
on drums predominantly.
Because you could mix it with the drums and it would just sound like the room. But that's all just that room.
That's it. Because the drums sound different from track to track.
That's a
on
kick.
here.
I think of that song, if I remember correctly, is a kick drum mic, a snare mic, and 2 mics. Because we were in a hurry.
Yeah.
Let's try it in here. See how it
like
sounds.
2 large diaphragm condensers or something, right?
I don't remember.
Who knows? Okay,
Could have
on
been.
tape though. On tape,
But that's 4. I think that's 4 mics of that particular song.
the vocals are dry. Are they totally dry, or is there a small room on them? Because you don't use a lot of reverb on a lot of those early records.
Again, that was all Rick's sort
That's
of thing.
Rick's thing, right? He was
wanted
very
those-
into dry.
He liked them very compressed and very, very. No, I don't think there's any reverb or anything on those songs.
What is the benefit of that, having an ambient drum part and having a dry vocal? Because it's
I don't know.
in your
It
face.
sounds good.
It sounds good.
Well, the ambient drum parts
Yeah.
were, for me, specifically a product of where we were.
Okay.
If we'd been in a very dead house, they would all been dead sounding. I mean, that's just the way. And the main room we had, it was a big room. Someone ages before taught me this trick with gates. It worked great in this room with Chad. Chad's a great drummer.
drummer.
And for some reason, his hi-hat level and it kind of all worked out where I would, if you hear reverb on the drums or snare or the kick on that record, it's all the room opening up with gates. It's not a reverb unit. It's all the room opening up.
So you're talking about the snare reverb is the room mics opening up,
Yeah.
and creating the reverb on the snare.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And like I think I just had a couple of room mics and maybe just
Is this
one.
something that you that would do later on too?
Yeah, but not often with that kind of success.
Okay. And did you do that in mix then on an SSL? Do you remember if you mixed it in an SSL?
I did mix an SSL, but if I remember correctly, I would always do that with drummer gates
Drummer gates,
because
yes.
of the keying and that kind of
Yep.
stuff. But worked great.
So you can really isolate where the snare drum hits. You
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
EQ where that
Yeah,
is.
I use samples on all my records. I don't know if I used a sample a lot on this record. I did some, but we had such good. They sounded so good the way they were.
And
Compression and everything.
And using a sample is to get above the if there's hash in the snare drum microphone, things like that, to trigger reverb, so you got to clean. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons
just
to
added
do that.
a little more impact,
Yeah.
And sometimes, honestly, when you're recording, when you're doing basic tracks, sometimes you're just trying to get everybody in the room,
Yeah.
and getting along, and playing the same song, and hoping magic happens. And sometimes magic happens, the snare's not great.
On a track like this, Flea is an excellent bass player.
Yes.
Would they track live, all the guys? John's a great guitar player.
Yeah,
They track together.
and we kept a lot of it.
Yeah.
Some of it we went back and did again.
Yeah.
Early on, we redid a bass on something, and we were so limited on tracks that you kind of just went over it, and we did that on one song, and we can't do that again. And also in those days, with a guy like Flea, I put 3 tracks: amp, direct, whatever. Now, I don't know, what was that about? Just put fucking one track, it'd be fine. Sounds great. Just put it
Okay,
all.
Brendan, how did you mic guitars back then?
Sometimes we'd have, I think his rig was maybe a 57 and maybe a mic a little further away. It wasn't anything complicated.
Okay.
I would tell anybody that great guitar tones are the player.
Yeah.
You can have a great rig and everything mic'd up some special way, this and that. If the guitar player's got no tone, it's not going to sound very good.